Hello
Hello there.
there. Welcome back to another episode of Star Wars in a Galaxy, watching all the Star Wars we can get our hands on. I'm Eli,
I'm Jacob.
and this is episode 96 of Star Wars in a Galaxy. We are back. We are doing another two episodes of Droids today, the third and fourth episodes in the Tamuzan arc, which are the Pirates of Tarnoonga and the Revenge of Kybo Ren. Great episodes today. I'm very
So
excited to get into into both these episodes. Jacob, you have anything to do before we jump into these summaries?
let's get it. In the Pirates of Tarnoonga, Jessica Meade, R2D2, and C3PO are transporting an important fuel shipment to King Julpa on Tamuzan. Jan Tosh is escorting them, but their freighter is attacked and boarded by Kybo Ren and his crew, who are piloting stolen Imperial TIE fighters. They're taken to the water planet of Tarnoonga, where the pirates have their hideout. The droids and Jan are brought to Kybo's court. Jan is thrown to a sea monster off a skiff, but he is rescued by C3PO and R2D2. Kybo tries to convince Jess to join him. Meanwhile, Jan and the droids are being chased through the pirate base, but Jess rescues them just when they are cornered by Kybo Ren. Ren heads into space, pursued by Jan and the droids, but they are trapped and cornered and brought aboard the Demolisher, Kybo Ren's Star Destroyer. However, once aboard, C3PO and R2D2 do manage to sabotage the Demolisher, and it is revealed that R2D2 and C3PO and company, they were actually the decoys all along for the real fuel shipment, which had already safely passed.
All right, and in the Revenge of Kybo Ren, Julpa and his court on Tamuzan traveled to meet with the warrior chieftain Toda, and his children to discuss an alliance to form against the evil pirate Kybo Ren Shaw. And while this is happening, Kybo Ren manages to escape his imprisonment by King Mon Julpa and kidnap Toda's daughter Jaren, and he takes her to his hideout on the planet of Bogden. C3PO and R2D2, along with their masters, rush to the rescue, getting Jaren back and fighting these beasts called and while it seems like Toda is going to trade Mon Julpa into Kybo Ren to save his daughter's life. It turns out that they were playing a sneaky on Kybo Ren all along, and they managed to fight and kill a significant number of Kybo Ren's forces before forcing them to flee and getting back to the planet of Tamuzan safe. So Jacob, actually, before we get into this, I want to talk to you a bit about structure of this show, because I made a guess on, I think, either the last episode or this episode. I forget which one it was. No, not that. Either one episode or two episodes ago, about how this series would go, and I was wrong. And so I'm going to update you on how I was wrong and what's going on with this series. Okay.
Okay.
I thought today we were going to end the Tamuzan arc, but as you
Mm.
noticed, there wasn't a great ending to this arc. If
Yeah.
it was the ending, that's because the Revenge of Kybo Ren is not the end of the arc. This is not a 4-episode arc. This is a 5-episode arc. The next episode we
goodness.
have, Kobe and Star Hunters, is the final episode of this arc. It's weird. Don't ask me.
Oh,
And then the other thing we have next time, that TV special, Great Keep, which is going to be twice the length of a regular Droids episode. So we're going to actually have like an hour's worth of stuff to watch next week instead of the normal 40 minutes.
okay.
That begins the Mungo Baobab arc, which is the final arc, which I believe is that in 5 episodes. I think is what I know. Yeah, I think it's Great Heap, and then the Tales of the Rune Comets, the Rune Games. That's actually not true. It's the Great Heap in 4 episodes. So Tale of the Rune Comets, Rune Games, Across the Rune Sea, and the Frozen Citadel. So it's 4, 5, and 5 basically, which is weird. But yeah, that's why I totally thought we were going to be finishing the Tamuzan arc today. We're not. We got one more to go.
I see.
Um,
One more. We
so,
got this.
but these two are very exciting in this arc because this is what I'm actually most excited about with this arc, because the first 2 episodes were definitely our propulsion into this conflict, but these last 3, especially these two, I don't know much about the third one, but I assume it's pretty similar. it's yeah, there are conflicts in them, but they're not the conflict like they resolved the original conflict in the second episode. You know what I mean? They kicked the Vizier's ass back to where he came from, and the Vizier's not coming back. Now they're having to deal with the after effects of Kybo Ren, which is a completely different story, still with the same people, still with the same society, but different story, which is interesting.
Yeah. I was especially a fan of the Pirates of Tarnoonga episode.
Yeah, absolutely.
I really liked. I just thought it was one of the best episodes yet. I thought it was really, really charming and hilarious. I really think it kind of nails the lighthearted romp the best of any episode. Yeah,
Yeah,
of anyone that of any of these that we've watched so far.
Yeah, I think the Pirates of Tarnoonga is so far my favorite of the Tamuzan arc. The first and last episodes of the Frongbyang arc, the first one, the White Witch, and the last one, A Race to the Finish, still kind of like hold up there for me, but Pirates of Tarnoonga is getting up there for me.
I enjoyed the Fromgang. I enjoyed the Fromgang one a lot, but I think this is my of the ones that we've seen so far, definitely my favorite, actually.
Yeah,
definitely.
There's some just interesting stuff.
Yeah,
I like, first of all, that we're still with them. Like, we're still with Mon Julpa, and Jan and Jessica are loyal to Mon Julpa. Like, I like that we're continuing on with this thread, and that it wasn't just a one-time mission, that they actually convinced them to join the cause.
Yeah, I think it's good that they kind of established a little bit of continuity, because that was something that felt kind of lacking from the short Fromgang arc, and then transit that kind of jarring. I found it to be a jarring transition a little bit trying to get into this show, but now it feels like it's kind of starting to spread its wings again, so to say.
Absolutely, yeah, and there's just some there's just I really like this episode just as a whole, because of it's interesting, because you think after they restored Mon Julpa to power, you think the problems would be fixed. You think the arc would end, but maintaining the peace is a lot harder than getting it in the first place. Which I think is a really interesting commentary on this arc, because you usually have that final victory, and that's the end of the story arc, or the end of the story journey. But no, you have to maintain that shit a little bit too. And Kybo Ren and his pirates are not letting Mon Julpa get off easy.
Yeah, I like how they kind of take the extra step, keep it from being too sorry, keep it from being too just, mission of the day. It made me think of like an earlier, like season 1 of the Clone Wars, for example, like would have ended it after that second episode, after Julpa's back in power. But this feels more like a late season Clone Wars type of story, to make that comparison. I think, just in terms of how it's structured, how they're spending their episodes.
I will say this, and this is one of my biggest critiques with both of these episodes, and I wish we got this a little bit more explained. Why do Kybo Ren and his pirates care still? Like, the Vizier's gone. The people who I assume were hiring them to do this are they're no longer an influence. Why do they still care about this planet anymore?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think the one thing that was lacking from this episode, from the two that we watched, but especially this one, I think, is kind of I feel like for this episode, the execution was good enough that I was just kind of drawn in, and I overlooked the flaws. But exactly what you said, when you really think about it, what are the pirates there for? Why is this all happening? It kind of feels a little bit taken for granted.
And I didn't need a long, complicated answer, or some complicated backstory, but seriously, just this planet is a good staging location for where they are in the galaxy, and they could use that to become a bigger crime gang in the galaxy. That's really all we needed.
The next Aldani question mark?
or the next like basically it's the From Gang all over again, actually, because that's what the From Gang were trying to do. They're trying to be like, I love the idea that constantly that would be a running bit, that constantly 3PO and R2 are fighting gangs that want to be the biggest in the galactic underworld, and they always fail. And they always fail at being the biggest because C3PO and R2, they're basically C3PO and R2 and their masters are more effective at controlling crime than the Empire ever has been and ever will be. And I think that's freaking hilarious.
Yeah. C3PO is basically RoboCop.
C3PO is basically a RoboCop.
It is interesting that we are almost halfway through a season of a Star Wars show that takes place in the Age of the Empire, made in 1985. And so far, we've seen almost none of the Empire. We've just seen organized crime.
I was gonna say we've seen Imperial symbology. That's what we get into this arc, because
that is true. Yeah,
they fly TIE fighters, that they had to have stolen from the Empire. They don't say that, but you said that, and that's what I reasoned as well. They didn't say
that he stole his Star Destroyer too.
They stole the Star Destroyer. They borrowed the Star Destroyer while it was docked for repairs, which reminded me, it's kind of like a mission that the Bad Batch undergoes in the 8th episode of the season, called Truth or Consequences, except for instead of stealing information from a Star Destroyer, they're stealing the entire goddamn Star Destroyer. Because in that mission, the Star Destroyer is undergoing repairs, or it's like undergoing like some sort of like pre-docking process onto its next mission or something like that. So I kind of imagined that like that this was the same thing with Kybo Ren and his men, but instead of just stealing the information, they stole the entire fucking vehicle, which is really gutsy. I also really love, speaking of that when Jan asks them about stealing that Star Destroyer, Kybo Ren's like, yeah, nobody's gonna notice though. Like, nobody's gonna care. It's one Star Destroyer. Yeah. And he's completely right. Nobody is going to care. Maybe the canon Empire would care a bit more, but I'm still not certain that they would absolutely send everything they had after one Star Destroyer. They've got hundreds and thousands of those things. Why would they care? Like, why would they care about, like, this was an isolated incident? Why would they care about one?
Yeah, no, definitely.
And a few TIE fighters along with it. Like the Empire can sustain that numeric damage because their whole thing is like ridiculous numbers, not just like crazy numbers, but like they have so many Star Destroyers, they have so many TIE fighters, so many Stormtroopers, so many of this, so many of that, and if one
strength in numbers, and radical expendability.
Expendability, absolutely, yeah.
I think I can't remember what source it was, but somewhere, I think it might have been in Legends, maybe they said there was something like something in the magnitude like 25,000. They were like, oh, we have 25,000 Imperial class Star Destroyers, something like that.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Like it was something where I was just like, well, if you look at it that way, dude, how can everyone afford not to steal a Star Destroyer? Like, they don't care that much.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing: was it easy for Kybo Ren's gang to do it? Probably not. Like I don't think the Empire just let them take it. But like, after they took it, which is an impressive feat in and of itself, like after they took it, like I'm not convinced that the Empire was like, shit, we gotta get that Star Destroyer back.
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to kind of. This is something that's interesting, actually, which is how the portrayal of the Empire has changed over time and is so radically different. Because you compare this Empire to the Empire in Andor, for example, night and day.
Absolutely, 100%.
And they're scary, like locking down, like no matter, even though.
And I'm sure that the Empire is scary in the Droids like universe as well. My thing is,
no, absolutely, but like, we know the kind of show that Droids is. Like, it's not the same kind of show as an Andor or even a Rebels or a. I'm not. It's not a criticism. I'm just saying it influences how the Empire is seen and how that influences.
This is not a show about space fascism.
The brass tacks of the lore is what I'm trying to say, I guess.
And my thing
But we'll see.
about this show and why it hasn't covered the Empire, because I do agree with you that it's an interesting thing that it doesn't really cover the Empire, but I think I know the reason why.
What do you think it doesn't?
Because again, we got to think about the time this was made. These episodes were released around the end of 1985. All they had about the Empire at that point was the information revealed in A New Hope, The Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi, and that's basically, and maybe some other ancillary sources, but the prequels didn't exist, so they didn't know how the Empire was made, how long it had been around. And I think that maybe this was a Lucas thing. I think that's my best guess, is it's probably a Lucas thing, that Lucas didn't want them exploring the Empire too much, because I think he always had a feeling in the back of his mind that he would go back one day and explore the Empire through the prequels. Yeah. Lucas has done this a lot. We know this from hearing from people who've worked with him, where he's like, hey, I might want to explore this in the future. Maybe stay away from that area.
Yeah, maybe don't.
Yeah, like maybe don't cover. Maybe don't cover like this was a whole thing. Like there were like 16 different attempts in Legends to get a grip on who Luke's mother was, and each time Lucas would be like, maybe have it be a fake or bad information or something, because I want to explore who Luke's mom is. Good
thing they held off on that one.
Yeah, or after like the days of the prequels, they did a few Wookiee Jedi, and then Lucas was like, I don't know, I don't think Wookiees are that likely to become Jedi. Of course, then flash forward like 10 years later, he makes Gungi, who is a Wookiee Jedi.
Proving him wrong. You gotta love Gungi.
But there's that line in the Clone Wars, and this is, I think, out of a commentary I saw. I forget who this was. I feel like it might have been a friend of the show, Jared the Dark Jedi. I'm not sure, but like there's a line in the Clone Wars where Hu Yang says to Gungi that Wookiees are considered rare among Jedi. And
oh yes, I remember that.
The idea is that Lucas wanted to restrict the number of Wookiee Jedis so that he could have a Wookiee Jedi and then say, oh, this is special, and not just be like Wookiee plus Jedi is not just the sum of its parts, it's something even more special. But that's just a giant tangent to basically say that I think that Lucas knew he was going to be doing more exploring in the galaxy far away sometime. Again, this is 2 years, about 3 after Return of the Jedi was released. He wouldn't come back into Star Wars storytelling or like have that desire for another 10, 11 years until he starts writing The Phantom Menace in 1997, I think it is. But I
thought he finished the first draft in 1995. Am I mistaken?
Something like that. Anyway,
I thought it was even earlier.
It could have been like
the point remains the same. The point remains the same.
The point remains. I think he knew he was coming back at some point.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean,
and
people kind of. Sorry, go ahead.
And also like the idea, like that's the other thing. Like Lucasfilm definitely did, and between 83 when freaking Jedi released and 95, 96 when Lucas started working on Phantom Menace. Yeah, Lucasfilm was not as like crazy with producing Star Wars stuff that much. But I will remind you that Temple of Doom was released in 84. The Last Crusade was 89. Willow was 88. The special editions were 97 and 98, and they had to be working on that way before because Lucas made all of his changes. So it's not like Lucasfilm was doing nothing. I think that Lucas just needed a break because of the strain that the original trilogy put on him, and also because he was going through a divorce because of the strain that the original trilogy put on him. This is a long digression, basically just to say that I think he always intended to come back to exploring more of the Empire, but he didn't want any of them to break any groundbreaking new lore.
Yeah.
When he didn't have as much control.
That makes sense. That makes sense to me. I understand why I did that. What's impressive to me, honestly, is how natural it, even like knowing the context of when this came out, it's honestly impressive to me, at least, how natural it feels just to have a show of pretty much no Force, pretty much no Empire. And at very few points was I ever kind of left wondering, hey, isn't this Star Wars? It felt really
Yeah,
good. It flowed.
definitely
I
works.
think
But there's
like
also
credit to the
enough.
show. They make it work.
Yeah, there's enough reference, like one of my favorite references, to make sure you know that it's still Star Wars. When
Oh yeah,
Jan is
obviously. Of course.
sentenced to death on Tarnoonga, I don't know if you saw this, but Jan is getting pushed off of a skiff off of a plank by a gangster to be fed to a monster in an execution that fails with R2 and 3PO standing. Wait, this is just Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, I think I wrote in my notes in all caps. I wrote, seriously,
I
seriously.
I literally
I was
said
like,
I said in my notes, what did I say? I said wait. Hero gets sentenced to death by criminal through the form of digestion by creature on skiff. I see you, droids. I see you, and
it's
we all
I will
see
say,
droids.
yeah.
And I will also say that, Jacob, can we agree? Like, I know the technical name of this creature is a Miradon, but it's a space Loch Ness monster, okay?
Oh my gosh, it looks exactly like a god, yeah. Loch Ness
It's a
monster called
space,
Mosasaurus or whatever you call it.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's a space Loch Ness
100%.
monster. You can't convince me otherwise. I every time they said Miradon, I just replaced it in my head with space Loch Ness monster.
Oh yeah,
Which,
absolutely.
yeah, go ahead.
I will say we love to talk about, the poetry of Star Wars and tapestry. It's like poetry, it rhymes. I will say with this whole skiff scene, it's a thin line sometimes between poetry and plagiarism, self-plagiarism
Well,
that
yeah,
that
it's
Star Wars likes to commit
self-plagiarism.
sometimes.
It's self-plagiarism. Hey,
It wasn't
at
even
least
like
no
this pretty
Star
much the
Wars.
same kind of
At,
skiff.
at least Star
It
Wars
was the same
never
thing.
copied the shot sequence from the skiff scene of Return of the Jedi frame for frame. Except for, oh wait, they actually did do that in the Clone Wars.
Wait,
Do you
which
remember
episode?
Slaves of the Republic? Remember the middle episode of the Digeria arc,
Oh, yeah,
where
with Anakin in the arena.
with the shots of Anakin and R2 and Ahsoka and Obi-Wan. It is filmed the exact same way. Anakin
Yeah.
does the exact same trick that Luke will do like 20 years later.
Yeah.
So
Those are some pretty legendary episodes, though, in
yeah,
my
no,
opinion.
absolutely,
Some of the
100%.
best of the Clone
Yeah.
Wars.
Yeah, no, I'm not, and I think I'm less bothered by that stuff than you are. I don't know.
Oh, I'm not bothered by it. I just think it's funny.
I think
I just think
I
it's
think
funny.
it's
I don't think it's I don't
yeah,
think it's any kind of glaring creative. I don't know. Maybe
yeah.
it's so kind of brazen and in your face here that
Well, that's Star Wars though. You know what I mean? Like,
especially, but like for the first content, for the
yeah,
first Star Wars thing to come out since Return of the Jedi, to immediately have a scene that is just a carbon copy of a scene in Return of the Jedi, but with water instead of sand. It feels a little weird to me. I'm not gonna lie.
that
It does
that's
feel a little weird to me.
that
But
that
if
that
that's the
that
biggest
is
complaint,
yeah. So be it.
if that's the biggest complaint I can have about this episode, I'm not complaining.
By the way, what is it
And
with
I will say
and this is something that's true in both of these episodes, because Kybo captures Jessica in this episode, and then he
yes.
captures Jaren in the next episode, right?
Yeah.
And he doesn't do anything to them, but like it was clearly it wasn't in the story for this purpose, but it was one of those clearly I want the girl, and like I don't want to say this to like because this sounds weird and totally like out of left field, but like there was some definitely rapey vibes going on there.
Yeah, it's one of those kind of cliche.
Yeah.
It's that cliche we all know and maybe don't love,
Yeah.
but
I was wondering
it's
how
there.
far they were going to go with it, and they didn't go far at all.
I will say though, the underwater chase scene was unexpectedly delightful. I thought the music, the
I will say
visuals,
that too, yeah.
everything. Like, I think it kind of just nailed the tone, the vibe that the show was going for. It just nails the kind of carefree, goofy adventure vibe that the show is going for, and I've really come around to what the show does tonally. With the characters, the little creative liberties that they take, the silliness that they engage in. You could say I've found myself really digging it. Actually, a little unexpected, but here we are.
Yeah. I think that I think this show definitely has a unique tone of it. I think that like here's my thing about this. Like I'm not saying that I love this show more than anything. But I think it's an important thing for Star Wars fans to watch. I think this show is, and I've been trying to say this over the last few episodes, but I think it's something I've more said in my head than on this show. So I'm going to say it out loud. I think that people need to watch at least a few episodes of this show as a Star Wars fan, especially in this day and age, because all of the goofiness complaints, all of the silliness complaints, all of the plot hole complaints apply completely here. But this show doesn't care about any of those complaints. And I think people should, as a whole in this fan base, not get too preachy, stop caring about those goofiness things. Because Star Wars has always been a goofy space fantasy about, wizards and stuff like that. And, I always say, like the great Ken Knapsack would, and like all credit to him for doing this, it's about the why, not about the how. It doesn't matter how the story goes down. It matters what we're learning from it, what the characters are going through, and what it teaches us. And I think Droids actually does a really good job of embracing the why, not the how. Again, it's a kid's show made in the 80s, back when Star Wars didn't really know what it was. So that inhibits it a little bit. But like for the circumstances, it does, I think, the best it could do.
Yeah, no, I absolutely I absolutely agree with you on that one. You nailed it. What else do you have for this? What else do you have for this episode?
There are several things that I love.
They do C-3PO. They do C-3PO dirty a lot in this show. Like the thing where he like some of the things in this show, he just falls and like breaks part of himself and just has to crouch walk around for like 5 minutes of
and
the
like
episode.
When he fights people,
come from?
Like C-3PO, all the time C-3PO tries to engage in violence, despite like the numerous times in the original trilogy, he tells us he's not about that life, is just fucking hilarious.
Yeah. And he goes from being timid C-3PO to all of a sudden, whenever the moment calls for it, he'll just do a 20-foot 720 backflip through the air and stick the perfect landing. Then he'll just go right back and be like, "Oh my goodness, dearie me, good gracious!"
It is.
What is even happening? What is even happening right now?
I also think
amazing, but I'm so confused.
Yeah, I also think that like there's some of the like absolutely a lot of the ways they escape in these episodes, and this is true for Droids, are quite convenient. But I find it funny how they do it, how they make the convenient escapes. Like, I love that one of the ways that Jessica escapes with the help of C-3PO and R2 and blah, blah, and those people from Kybo Ren is basically by playing Go Fetch with Kybo Ren.
Yeah.
Like, Kybo Ren turns into a dog for a minute.
With the randomly. Training droid, I was like, you got it.
That was just so odd, and I'm like, that was just so weird. I'm like, you know what? I can't, like, there's nothing I can say that will ever justify this moment in one way or the other. Like, there's nothing I can say that can convince me that this is a good moment, and there's also nothing I can convince myself to say it's a bad moment. So I'm just gonna go with it. They did what they did. It was a small part of the episode. How do I feel about it? Yes, I feel about it. I feel very about it. I'm still not exactly sure how I feel about it, but I feel very about it.
One of the moments of all time in Star Wars. Yes,
one of the moments of all time, absolutely. And what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, and then R2. This is my favorite part, when R2 at the end of the episode loads the rockets into the Star Destroyer's munitions cannons the wrong way. That's R2 in his being a little bastard mode, and I love R2 in his being a little bastard mode. It makes me so happy when he's being a little bastard.
And then he just casually loads the other droid in there too.
Yeah, just
send that droid to its doom casually, just because. I was like, you gotta be kidding me right now.
It's very funny. And then we learned that the whole thing was a setup, and they pulled sneaky on them, which good twist. Gotta say, fooled me. And I think, unless you got anything else to say, Jacob, I wanted to put one line in here that doesn't reference something, because that something hadn't happened yet, but I think it's funny still.
Do it.
C-3PO, after R2 sabotages the thing, after the Star Destroyer, he goes, "I think you overdid it this time, R2," which reminded me of a certain man after creating a certain Star Wars movie saying, "I may have gone too far in a few places." It's
That can
just
apply to
funny.
most of Star Wars as well. I may have gone too far in a few places.
I may have gone too far in a few places. I used to say that
I
my
love
favorite
it.
quote from Lucas is the hopefully it'll work after the is like poetry quote. No, it's I may have gone too far in a few places.
I love it. It's brilliant.
It's
George
he's
Lucas.
screening a Star Wars movie for the crew that made it, and he whispers to Rick McCallum, he's like, I may have gone too far in a few places. Like, what are you doing,
Dude,
man?
he has some all-time. George Lucas has some all-time quotes. He's got some all-timers for sure.
Yes, I would also
The
put
Mara
for.
Jade
I was gonna
incident.
say I did not create Mara Jade. I didn't. Although that was a
Out,
bit.
get out.
Out. I need you to get out.
That one gets me every time. That one gets me every time.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't even know who that guy was.
One more thing about this episode, actually.
Absolutely.
So I couldn't help but notice the design of Kybo Ren's Star Destroyer, sorry, looked awfully familiar. Now I did a little digging. This is actually a Gladiator class Star Destroyer.
Interesting. What does that mean?
It was originally brought into canon. It's extensively used in various legends books and comics and what have you for the Empire. And it was originally brought into canon in the Nexus of Power book, which is a supplement book for the Force and Destiny Star Wars role-playing game.
That is deep. That is very deep. So this kind of Star Destroyer.
I was shocked.
The Gladiator class Star Destroyer is canon, is what you're saying.
And he wasn't actually maybe he was trying to be funny when he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, it's a little." Well, couldn't Kybo Ren say something when he brought them aboard? He says something along the lines of, "Oh, I'm sorry, it's a little small," something like that. Now, this Star Destroyer is 600 meters long as opposed to the 1,600 meters of the Imperial Star Destroyer.
Yeah, I did
also,
notice it seemed pretty small comparatively.
Yeah.
I'm like, is that just in this universe? Like, is that just in this art style? The Star Destroyers are smaller, but no, this is an actual smaller Star Destroyer.
Yeah. Also, can we talk about how R2D2 and C3PO have bath toys in their oil bath?
I wrote that down in my notes. I was going to skip over that, but I'm so glad you picked it. That's fantastic. It was delightful. It's delightfully goofy.
That was the moment when I was like, sorry, go ahead.
That was one of my, and I don't have many of these moments in Star Wars, but I'm always glad when I do have one of them. That was my aww moment.
Yeah, that was the moment when I said, this show needs to be protected at all costs. C3PO, R2D2, everyone involved in this scene in any way, they need to be protected at all costs.
Yeah, R2 and C3PO take baths together. They have their favorite TV shows. You know, like protect these baby boys.
Just droid stuff, you know.
Just droid stuff. Just
a couple of boys.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, Revenge of Kybo Ren. Where do you want to start with this one? Because I was a little more mixed. I was a little more mixed on this episode, to be honest.
This one's a really interesting episode. So we have this conflict in the episode that I was confused about earlier, but I think makes a tiny bit more sense to me now, and I'll tell you why after I explain the conflict. And that conflict is between Toda and Julpa, Lord Toda and Julpa.
Yeah.
Which and absolutely it looks like they don't trust each other at the beginning. And it seems like the entire time Toda's going out of the way to either betray Julpa or make his life more difficult. But then we reveal that at the end that they were trying to play with Kybo Ren to make sure that Toda's daughter got safely anyway, because they didn't trust Kybo Ren to his word, which is a good thing because he doesn't keep it. So I wonder how much of that drama was actually real and not. Like, I believe they had issues with each other, but I'm not sure how much. I'm not sure how much that actually affected this episode. I think they made it seem like it did, but I don't know if it actually did.
Yeah, that wasn't one of the things that really stuck out to me about this episode, to be honest. But I mean, I do agree that there is some kind of ambiguity there, a little bit.
Yeah,
a little bit of confusion, maybe. So yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting question for sure. It is an interesting question.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. There are those times, and we've done this thing where, like, oh, the hero's plan a scheme to trick the villains, but not all the heroes know it, and we figure out we've done that a few times now, and it's
Oh, we've
always
done that.
interesting. It's always interesting to figure out how much, like to try and think about how much each of them knows in the plan knows, and how like what was
Yeah.
real and what was in the play acting of, yeah, we need to get this mission done by any means possible, even if it's by trickery.
Yeah. I don't know. It makes sense either way to me. I wasn't really. I don't know. It didn't occur to me to put too much stock into it. I guess.
Yeah, I put stock into it in the beginning, but now that I'm thinking about it, like it's like, yeah, I was wondering why they were such a, because they never really explained why they hated each other.
Yeah.
But
I
don't really feel like they needed to for this episode. I feel like they hate each other and then they work together, but we don't know it for the entire episode. It's a decent enough storyline.
Yeah. I just think, with Julpa with you had Jess, you had Jan. It's just not where my mind went for this next episode. And I think that's one of the things.
So where did it go?
I was expecting more of a continuation. I don't know exactly how to describe. It just felt something about the way they transitioned from last episode to this episode and the way that they shifted the focus of it. It just didn't feel, I don't know, it felt a little bit stilted. It didn't feel like maybe this was just me, obvious, I guess it's just a personal matter of personal preference. It's just not where I envisioned or hoped the story might have gone. If that makes sense.
Not really. Explain more.
How do I think, you have Kybo Ren and he's plotting, and what's his name? Jin Oba, the first mate.
Uba, I think.
Jin Uba. He's breaking Ren free, and then
Jin Oba. Jin Oba.
Jin Oba. I think it's just a matter of it just felt like things happened without, I don't know. It felt kind of like things just happened for the sake of things happening. Especially
I see where you're going with this. The things that
the
things
Garen
didn't
escaping, the sungwas, how would
the sungwas.
I wrote it down wrong.
I see
what
you're trying to say.
Yeah.
For you, it felt like the plot happened just to happen. Like it was undoing a lot of the stuff that the last episode had just done, just to cause another episode to happen.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. That's a good way of putting it.
I understand that. I'm not sure generally if I agree, and even if I did, it's not that I think your opinion is wrong. I just like, I don't know, it just for me didn't impact the episode as much. I definitely don't like this episode as much as the Pirates of Tarnoonga, but I don't think that affected my watch of the episode.
That's perfectly understandable. Yeah. That's perfectly understandable.
What did affect my watch of this episode, and I will say why I think this episode is not as good as the Pirates of Tarnoonga, is I feel like it kind of has a lot of the same story beats. I feel like it's kind of just the same story over again. Just like replace a few details.
I guess I could see that a little bit. I think I can see through. Yeah, I guess like C-3PO's part in it, leading away the sungwas, and then
and like the fake out of the heroes, they do both of the fake outs, and like the them playing games, and like the whole like, oh, we tricked you at the end into believing X, but actually Y is true. I feel like a lot of the same beats were covered in this episode, and they were covered up well enough that it took me a while to notice. But like,
I think I think the main thing is the fake out.
Yeah, the fake out
story beat, that just like using that as like a major crux of the episode two times in a row.
Yeah.
It's a little rough, maybe.
Yeah.
It's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world.
And
but
I will
still,
and that's the thing, and I think this is interesting because it calls into like the, you know, the idea of how droids villains should behave. Because
mm,
after the first two episodes of Droids, Tig From looked like an idiot, but the From gang was a dangerous gang, and Size looked like he has some extra tricks up his sleeve. After
yeah,
the third and fourth episodes, both of them looked like complete and utter idiots. And how the hell did they manage to get as far as they did? And I feel like the
yeah.
same thing is happening with Kylo Ren a little bit right now, honestly. I feel
You're
like
just being too incompetent, kind of.
I think he's being incompetent just one too many times. Like
Yeah,
that it's starting to, and I don't think it's becoming this way, but I think it's starting to become a little bit too. It's going a little bit too far, I guess you would say.
yeah. I think it did feel. I think it did feel a little bit in this episode like his kind of incompetence. It kind of felt like a crutch
Yeah,
at
absolutely.
times, a little bit.
I will
Just
say
not.
that
Yeah,
Yeah, I will say that I did love the running bit of every time he'd go, no one escapes the wrath of Kybo Ren. He would almost always get interrupted by
yeah.
something
That
attack.
was.
Like
I
that's
like that the
beautiful.
show. Yeah, I like that the show can be kind of campy like that and doesn't take
Yeah,
itself. Obviously, we know it doesn't. We know it doesn't take itself
too
that
seriously. Yeah,
seriously. I mean,
yeah,
we've watched it.
yeah. No,
So
absolutely.
yeah,
But also, just saying like the words Kybo Ren Star Destroyer and like the Wrath of Kybo Ren, like it's so weird because I know
yeah,
we talked about this with I believe it was with Michael in our premiere episode, but like the fact that or in the second episode of the season, I forgot which one it was, but like the fact that his name is Kybo Ren, spelled the exact same except for a B instead of an L, is just too funny.
yeah. It's hilarious. I thought,
Like
oh,
it,
that show is never gonna see the light of day again. It's fine.
yeah. Then puts it on
And
Disney
then
Plus. Yeah, it's interesting.
there's lots of things that sound alike in Star Wars.
Yeah. Here's another
Can't
one that I
blame them.
want. Here's another one I want to point out to you. I mean, I'm sure you were going to bring this up sooner rather than later. So the base of Kybo Ren is on the planet of Bogden, which is another pre-reference, like Bunta is, because Bogden
Ruins of
appears.
Bogden, right?
The Bogden appears in this episode, which premiered in 1985, late 1985, and script writing for Attack of the Clones started in early to mid 2000. So
Bam.
it
Yeah,
was
the
about
deep cut.
15, 16 years until Lucas pulled the name from Droids back again for not only clones, but also, if you remember, Bounty Hunter, the last mission takes place on one of the moons of Bogden, where Jango Fett kills Komari Bosa and then is recruited by Count Dooku to be a template in his clone army.
Could forget.
Yeah, pivotal moment in the saga, but it's just interesting to see like what they thought Bogdan looked like all these times ago, and it looks like Dagobah. It looks like Dagobah light.
Yeah, it does. It's yeah.
Like it's cool. It's a swamp planet, but it's Dagobah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big galaxy.
Yeah.
We've got quite a few Tatooines at this point.
Oh, absolutely.
We've got a couple of Rocket of Primes, maybe.
Yeah. A
A
couple
couple
of
of
Hoths. Yeah.
couple of Hoths, couple of not Coruscant,
Yeah. Sure. Coruscant. A
couple of
couple of Alderaans,
Ord Mantell.
or like
The
Alderaan, or
grimy,
Hosnian Prime, or
city
Dayu.
planet. Yeah,
Yeah. Absolutely.
we could go on. We could go
Yeah,
on.
we could go on, but yeah. I also just love these sungwa beasts are really, really weird.
Oh yeah, they're the oddest.
They're just strange. And like apparently I'm looking on the Wikipedia page for it, resembling a nightmarish cross of wolf and weasel. So basically they're supposed to be if a wolf and a weasel had a baby, which I don't want to imagine. So
That sounds a weasel with that size. Get out of here.
yeah,
That's terrifying.
no,
That is
yeah.
terrifying.
It's just there's just that I struggle sometimes with the creatures of the creatures of the show are very hit or miss for me. I feel like the Durkee from the last two episodes was a miss. I feel like the Sungwa was a miss. I feel like the Spacelochnessmonster, which I even forgot the name of now because I've just been so calling it the Miradon. I think that's a hit. Like I like that. Sometimes they work for me, sometimes they don't. I don't know.
Yeah, just trying stuff.
They're just
They're
trying
just trying
stuff, and I
stuff.
admire the
It's
effort,
great.
honestly. Yeah. And so the final episode ends with Jessica Mead leaving, and we're probably not going to see her in this show again, even though we have one episode left in this arc and more episodes left in the show altogether. I quite like the character of Jessica Mead. The only thing I didn't like about her is that she had too normal of a name.
Yeah,
But
it's a little jarring, but Jessica,
it was a little
all
jarring.
the better, all the better.
Yeah.
I did like in which one was it? In Pirates of Tarnoonga. I did like when she rescues the droids and Jan. Then Jan says, "We were just about to rescue you." She basically says, "Yeah, sure you were."
Yeah, no, that's a classic Star Wars dynamic. Absolutely. Do you have anything else?
Yeah, that's another Star Wars is a flat circle moment for sure.
Yeah. Do you have any
For sure.
other thoughts about either of these two episodes, or should we?
That's it. That's it for me.
I think that's going to be it for this episode of Star Wars in the Galaxy. Next week, we hope you enjoyed the latest episode of Epic Confrontations, Derek versus Bill, up on the In a Galaxy YouTube channel. Thanks to all those people with our participation for that. Next week, we are going to be covering the next two episodes, or the next episode and then a TV special, which is more like a double-length episode. Kobe and the Star Hunters, and then the special, which is called Great. In the meantime, you can follow us on Twitter at In a Galaxy Pod, Instagram at Star Wars in a Galaxy. You listen to us on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast, we will be there. If we're not, email us swinagalaxy@gmail.com, and you can follow my personal account at OshiFan327. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the notification bell so you don't miss an upload from us or a live stream or whatever it is. Hope you all enjoyed that bracket stream. Again, by the way, another plug for that. And I think until next time, may the force be with you. Always.
Always.